Welcome to the Harvard Business IdeaCast. I'm Sarah Green from harvardbusiness.org, and I'm joined today by Michael Watkins, author of the best-selling book, The First 90 Days. His latest book is called Your Next Move, The Leader's Guide to Navigating Major Career Transitions. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
Really good to be here, Sarah.
So I think in a time of economic turmoil, we probably all feel like we're in a time of transition, whether or not our job title has actually changed. Is every transition unique, or are there some overarching themes that mark every transition?
Well, first of all, I think you're right. The current economic situation has really generated an almost continuous set of transitions for people. So even if they're not taking a brand new job, their job responsibilities are really changing in pretty fundamental ways. So there's not just the normal kinds of transitions going on right now, promotions, joining new companies. There's a lot of what I call hidden transitions, downsizing, restructuring, jobs being altered and so on. And it's certainly, a challenging time. In terms of sort of general principles for making successful transitions, when I wrote the previous book, The First 90 Days, I sort of laid out a set of principles for how to make a successful transition into a new leadership role, looking at crucial things like how do you learn about a new organization or a new role, how do you secure early wins, how do you create alliances. In the new book, I'm really sort of looking much more deeply at certain classic kinds of transitions that people go through. And what I found as I was doing this was really there are two core components that you need to pay attention to. One is, what's the personal adaptive challenge you're going through? What does this mean for you personally in terms of the new competencies or the new skills or the new attitudes that you need in order to really step up to the role? And on the other side, there's what I think of as the organizational change challenge. What do you need to do with this organization? What's the objective? What kind of transformation effort do you need to undertake? And I think that as long as leaders get those two challenges really clear in their minds, what do I need to do to myself and what do I need to do to the organization, that just provides a tremendous amount of clarity as you begin to plan how to move forward.
Let's focus a little bit more on some of those personal adaptive challenges for something like a promotion. A promotion is supposed to be a happy occasion, so what are the challenges there?
Well, I think of promotions as sort of beginnings and endings at the same time. I mean, obviously it's exciting. You've worked so hard to, get to the point where people have recognized you with this promotion into a new role. That's the good news. The bad news is you really have to sort of reinvent yourself in order to be successful in the new role. Because what the research consistently shows is that what has made you successful in one role is not necessarily what's going to make you successful when you go to a higher level. And there's a couple questions I always ask people to focus in on during promotions. One is, what do you really love to do, and are very good at doing that you need to do less of? And what are some things that you're not so good at or you don't like doing that you need to do more of? And so if you really focus in on both what you need to let go of and what you need to embrace, it really helps focus you on what the personal adaptive challenges are. Then of course there's classic challenges related to promotion like delegation. You need to delegate differently. You have a broader scope typically, so you're challenged to think about how do I manage breadth and depth consistently. It's really those sorts of things in the promotion scenario.
Let's talk about another aspect of promotions that you mentioned in the book, which is leading former peers, because I know that's something I think a lot of people face. What are some of the challenges and how do you make that work?
Well, it's a fascinating one, and it's fascinating in part because when I ask groups of leaders, how many of you have gone through that transition at some point in your careers, virtually everybody puts their hand up. And then I ask them, so, okay, how many of you want to do it again? And nobody puts their hands up. Because it's just a really painful thing to go through. People think they know you, and there's a certain set of relationships you have as peers, and now you have to completely re-engineer those relationships to function as a boss. And you face the issue of people, may think that they can presume on you in some way or another. You have to figure out how to exert your authority without, turning into Napoleon. There's lots of classic challenges that you face like this. You have to deal with people that may be disappointed competitors, or people that enjoy the kind of relationship they had with you as a peer and don't want to let it go. So it's a very challenging time.
One of the other kinds of transitions you talk about in the book is international moves, but part of the focus is really on people's families and the impact of transitions on someone's family. What can people in transition do to mitigate any negative impacts on their family?
Well, first of all, you can't mitigate all the negative impacts. I mean, there's a certain kind of grieving process that goes on for families when you move. I mean, I went through this recently, taking my family to Switzerland, and there's a dark night that you go through, you know, when you've left everything behind, you've left your support system behind, you know, your kids are in new schools and they're miserable, you know, and so you go into the valley for a while inevitably, and you come out the other side and the sun starts shining again. But there are things you can do to help. One is make sure that you time the move appropriately so that you don't disrupt things unnecessarily. Try to preserve the familiar. I always tell people, try to set up your kids' rooms exactly as they were where they are. Start making forward connections to the new area quickly. Try to connect your significant other or your kids to people in the new environment as early as you can, even before you move. Figure out how to maintain backward connection, you know, whether it's Skype or it's some other mechanism that they can continue to talk to their friends. That's really crucial. Get some help building the support system. You know, find the doctor, find the dentist, you know, so that you don't feel that deep sense of dislocation. Because what you find consistently is, for the person going into the job, it's exciting, and they're really enthused about it. But for the family, it's a whole different experience. At the same time, you can't be successful in the job if your family's miserable. So get the family settled first is the biggest piece of advice I give to people in that situation.
So we've talked a lot about the different personal challenges, but it's obviously in the organization's best interest to have people they've promoted or who are in transition succeed. So what are organizations doing wrong, just quickly, and maybe what could they be doing better?
Yeah, I think it's not so much what they're doing wrong, it really is what they can do better. I think that if you look at organizations, they typically don't realize how much transition is going on and the net impact it's having on the organization. I mean, even in normal times, close to a quarter of the managers in a typical large company are changing jobs every year, right? And every one of those people is impacting maybe 10 other people. I mean, my standing joke about this is that even if you're not in transition, you're likely having someone else's transition inflicted on you. So there's this tremendous amount of network impact, right? And so if you can accelerate everybody, if you can give everyone a common language and a common set of tools and a common approach for making transitions, it has an impact on overall organizational nimbleness. I mean, I truly believe it's a source of competitive advantage for companies, the ability to simply focus in on and help everyone going through transitions be more successful.
As the economy does begin to improve, I think we're all expecting to see a lot of hiring going on. So what can companies do to be better about onboarding their new employees?
Well, this is tremendously important because even though we've made a lot of progress in terms of helping people get on board, I just see so many organizations that are still not doing a very good job of onboarding. And partially it is, I don't think they fundamentally understand what good onboarding really requires. I mean, virtually everyone will do the kind of classic orientation stuff of here's our beautiful company and here's our lovely mission statement and here's our organizational chart and so on. What they typically miss is that the biggest reason why people fail or underperform has to do with the culture and politics of the organization. And culture functions like an immune system of a kind, you know. It's there to kind of keep foreign bodies out and preserve the integrity of the organism. But the problem is when you're trying to bring people in from the outside, you can have an overreactive immune system. And if the people coming in don't understand the culture, don't understand the politics, they're really going to generate a kind of an immunological reaction that can really be terribly destructive, not just for them, but also for the organization. So I focus a lot on basically three things in onboarding beyond the orientation work. How are we going to help this person adapt to the new culture? How are we going to connect them to the right people and help them form the right relationships? And how are we going to be sure that we really align expectations in every direction so that they're set up for success?
Michael Watkins, thanks so much for joining us today.
Good to be here, Sarah. Thank you.
That was Michael Watkins, and the book is Your Next Move. For more on career development, visit harvardbusiness.org.